The rain battered the windshield as I sped through the quiet streets of suburban Portland, my heart pounding louder than the storm outside. I was late again, and Riley, my best friend since middle school, wasn't the forgiving type when it came to punctuality. But it wasn't Riley's face flashing in my mind as I pulled into the driveway of her mom's new house. It was Miss Harper, Lillian, her impossibly magnetic mother, who'd been haunting my thoughts for months. I was 22, freshly graduated from college, and stuck in that limbo where you're supposed to have life figured out but feel like you're drowning in uncertainty. Riley and I had grown up inseparable, her house my second home through every teenage heartbreak and triumph. But Lillian? She was the quiet force in the background, always kind, always composed, with eyes that seemed to see right through you. At 48, she carried herself with a grace that made my stomach twist in ways I couldn't explain. Not until recently, anyway. The new house was a stunner, all glass and clean lines, nestled in a cul-de-sac surrounded by towering pines. I parked, grabbed my bag, and sprinted through the rain to the porch. Riley flung open the door before I could knock, her blonde curls bouncing as she rolled her eyes. "Took you long enough, Ellie. Mom's been waiting to give you the grand tour." "Sorry," I muttered, shaking rain from my jacket. Traffic was a nightmare. Riley smirked, dragging me inside. The house smelled of fresh paint and cedar, warm light spilling across hardwood floors. Lillian appeared from the kitchen, and my breath caught. She wore a loose white blouse tucked into tailored pants, her dark hair streaked with silver and pulled into a low bun. Her smile was soft but piercing, like she knew something I didn't. "Ellie, it's so good to see you," she said, her voice smooth as velvet. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten us." "Never," I said, too quickly, my cheeks burning. Riley didn't notice, already rambling about her new job, but Lillian's eyes lingered on me, warm and unreadable. The tour began, and I trailed behind, half listening as Lillian pointed out the skylights, the custom bookshelves, the sprawling backyard with a hot tub tucked under a pergola. Every room felt like an extension of her, elegant, intentional, a little mysterious. Riley got a call and stepped outside, leaving me alone with Lillian in the upstairs hallway. My pulse raced, though I couldn't pinpoint why. "This is my favorite part," Lillian said, opening a door to the master bathroom. It was a dream, white marble, a massive walk-in shower with glass walls, and a freestanding tub that looked like it belonged in a spa. "What do you think?" "It's incredible," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She was standing close, her perfume, something floral and warm, making my head spin. "Want to see how the shower feels?" she asked, her tone light but with an edge that sent a shiver down my spine. Before I could respond, she turned on the water, steam curling into the air. "Go on, try it. I'll wait." I laughed nervously, assuming she was joking. But her eyes held mine, steady and daring, and something in me, something reckless, wanted to say yes. Instead, I mumbled, "Maybe later," and she smiled, like she'd expected that answer. Dinner was a blur of Riley's stories and Lillian's quiet laughter. I couldn't stop stealing glances at her, the way her fingers curled around her wine glass, the way her eyes flicked to mine when she thought I wasn't looking. By the time Riley suggested I crash in the guest room because of the storm, I was a bundle of nerves, my thoughts tangled in Lillian's presence. "Ellie, you're welcome to stay as long as you need," Lillian said as Riley headed to bed. Her voice was low, intimate, and I felt it in my chest. "The guest room's all set, but let me show you where the towels are." She led me back to the master bathroom, her footsteps soft on the hardwood. The house was quiet now, the rain a steady hum outside. She handed me a towel, her fingers brushing mine, and I froze. Her touch lingered, deliberate, and when I looked up, her eyes were searching mine. "You seem tense," she said softly. "Everything okay?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Just a lot on my mind." She stepped closer, her voice barely audible. "You can tell me, Ellie. You always could." My heart hammered. I wanted to tell her everything, How I'd been questioning myself, how her presence made my skin buzz, how I didn't know what any of it meant. But I didn't. I just stood there, clutching the towel, until she smiled and stepped back. "Get some rest," she said, but her eyes said something else entirely. I lay awake in the guest room, the storm raging outside, my mind racing with questions I wasn't ready to answer. What was happening to me? Why did Lillian's every glance feel like a spark? And why, as I drifted to sleep, did I imagine her standing in that shower, the steam curling around her, waiting for me to join her? The next morning, sunlight streamed through the guest room window, painting the walls gold. I woke with a start, Lillian's face lingering in my dreams. The house was quiet, and a quick check of my phone told me Riley had left for an early meeting, leaving a note, "Back by lunch. Make yourself at home." I wandered downstairs, the memory of last night's tension clinging to me like damp clothes. The kitchen was empty, but a pot of coffee sat warm on the counter, a mug set out like it was waiting for me. I poured a cup, my hands shaky, and that's when I heard her. "Morning, Ellie," Lillian called from the back patio. I stepped outside, the air crisp and smelling of wet grass. She was sitting in a wicker chair, a book in her lap, her hair loose and catching the light. She looked younger in the morning sun, her face unguarded, and my stomach flipped. "Sleep okay?" she asked, closing her book. "Yeah, I lied," sitting across from her. "This place is amazing." She smiled, but there was a flicker of something else, curiosity, maybe, or amusement. "It's a fresh start," she said. "After the divorce, I needed something mine." I nodded, unsure what to say. Riley had mentioned the divorce last year, how it had shaken Lillian, but also set her free. I'd never thought much about it until now, seeing her in this house, so self-assured, so her. "Want to help me with something?" she asked, standing. "I'm planting some herbs in the garden. Could use an extra pair of hands." I followed her to the backyard, where a small plot of soil waited, tools scattered nearby. We knelt side by side, digging and planting, the silence between us comfortable but charged. Her hands moved with precision, and I couldn't stop watching them, strong, steady, flecked with dirt. At one point, our fingers brushed as we reached for the same trowel, and I pulled back, my face hot. "You're quiet today," she said, not looking up. "Something on your mind?" I swallowed, focusing on the soil. "Just figuring things out." She paused, her eyes meeting mine. "That's what your 20s are for. Figuring out who you are, what you want." Her voice softened. "Who you love." My breath hitched. Was she fishing, or was I reading too much into it? Before I could respond, she stood, brushing dirt from her jeans. "Come on, let's clean up. You've got dirt all over you." Back inside, she led me to the master bathroom again, the same one from last night. My heart raced as she turned on the sink, handing me a washcloth. "Here," she said, her voice teasing. "Unless you want to try that shower now." I laughed, but it came out shaky. "You're obsessed with that shower." "Maybe I am," she said, her smile wicked. "It's big enough for two, you know." My jaw dropped, and she laughed, the sound rich and warm. "I'm kidding, Ellie. Relax." But she wasn't kidding, not entirely. I could feel it in the air, the way her eyes lingered, the way her voice dipped. I washed my hands, my movements clumsy, and when I turned, she was closer than I expected, her shoulder brushing mine. "Ellie," she said, her tone serious now. "You don't have to hide from me. Whatever you're feeling, it's okay." I froze, the washcloth dripping in my hand. "I don't know what I'm feeling," I admitted, my voice barely audible. She reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, her touch gentle but electric. "That's okay, too," she whispered. The moment stretched, heavy with possibility, until the front door slammed. Riley's voice echoed through the house. "Ellie, you up?" Lillian stepped back, her expression unreadable. "Go," she said softly. "She'll want to see you." I nodded, my heart pounding, and left the bathroom, my mind a whirlwind. Riley dragged me to a cafe for lunch, chattering about her job, but I barely heard her. All I could think about was Lillian, her touch, her words, the way she made me feel seen in a way I'd never been before. That night, back at the house, I couldn't sleep. The guest room felt too small, the air too thick. I got up, intending to get water, but found myself outside the master bathroom, the door slightly ajar. Steam curled out, and I heard the faint sound of water running. "Lillian?" I called, my voice trembling. The water stopped, and she appeared in the doorway, a towel wrapped around her, her hair damp. "Ellie," she said, surprised but not startled. "Can't sleep." I shook my head, my mouth dry. She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. "Come in," she said, her voice low. "Let's talk." I followed her into the bathroom, my heart in my throat, knowing whatever happened next would change everything. The bathroom was warm, the air heavy with steam, and the faint scent of lavender. Lillian stood by the vanity, her towel loosely knotted, her damp hair clinging to her shoulders. I hovered near the door, my bare feet cold against the marble, my mind screaming at me to leave, but my body rooted in place. "Ellie," she said, her voice soft but steady, "you look like you're about to bolt. Sit down. Please." I perched on the edge of the tub, clutching my hands together to stop them from shaking. She leaned against the vanity, watching me with that same unnerving calm, like she could see every thought racing through my head. "I'm sorry," I blurted. "I didn't mean to. I don't know why I'm here." She smiled, not mocking, just kind. "You're here because you want to be," she said. "And that's okay." I shook my head, my voice cracking. "It's not okay. You're Riley's mom. I'm nobody. Just some confused kid who doesn't know what she's doing." "You're not a kid," she said firmly. "And you're not nobody. You're Ellie, the girl who's been part of my life for years, who's smart and kind and figuring things out." She paused, her eyes softening. "Just like I was once." I looked up surprised. "You?" She laughed quietly, crossing her arms. "You think I always had it together? I was married for 20 years, Ellie. I spent most of them ignoring who I really was because it was easier. Safer." Her voice dropped. "But safe isn't the same as happy." My chest tightened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I see you," she said, stepping closer. "I see how you look at me, how you've been looking at me. And I'm not going to pretend I don't feel it too." The words hit like a shockwave. I stood, my legs unsteady, and backed toward the door. "This is wrong," I whispered. "Riley would hate me. She'd hate us." Lillian's face softened, but she didn't move. "Riley loves you. She'd want you to be honest with yourself. But I won't push you, Ellie. This is your choice." I wanted to run, to hide from the truth in her eyes, but I couldn't. Instead, I stood there, caught between fear and something else, something warm and terrifying and alive. The shower was still running, a soft hum in the background, and I glanced at it, my mind flashing to her earlier joke about it being big enough for two. She followed my gaze, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You're thinking about it, aren't you?" My face burned. "No," I lied, but my voice betrayed me. She stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her skin through the towel. "Ellie," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "if you want to walk away, I'll understand. But if you stay, I'm here." My breath caught, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just us, her eyes, her voice, the pull I couldn't ignore. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe the storm still raging inside me, maybe the way she looked at me like I was enough, but I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. Her hand found mine, her fingers warm and steady, and she led me toward the shower. The steam enveloped us, blurring the edges of the world, and when she let her towel fall, I stopped breathing. She was beautiful, not in a perfect way, but in a real, lived-in way, scars and lines and all. She stepped into the shower, the water cascading over her, and turned to me, her eyes questioning but sure. I hesitated, my heart pounding, then pulled off my shirt and stepped in after her. The water was warm, soaking through my clothes, and she reached for me, her touch gentle but certain. "You're okay," she whispered, her hands on my shoulders. We're okay. We stood there, the water washing away the fear, the doubt, the guilt. It wasn't about the shower, not really, it was about the moment, the choice, the truth I'd been running from. I was falling for her, and she was letting me. When we finally stepped out, wrapped in towels, the world felt different. Quieter. Clearer. She brushed a wet strand of hair from my face, her smile soft. "You're braver than you think," she said. But as we dressed and returned to the real world, the weight of what we'd done settled in. Riley would be back soon. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a minefield. What had I done? And what would happen when the truth came out? The days that followed were a blur of stolen glances and secret moments. Lillian and I didn't talk about the shower, not directly, but it hung between us like a shared heartbeat. Every touch, her hand brushing mine as we passed in the kitchen, her foot nudging mine under the table, felt like a promise, a risk, a thrill. Riley noticed nothing, or so I thought. She was caught up in her new job, her new life, and I was grateful for her distraction. But guilt gnawed at me, a constant reminder of the line I'd crossed. Lillian was her mother, the woman who'd baked us cookies and driven us to soccer practice. How could I justify this? One afternoon, while Riley was at work, Lillian invited me to the local farmers market. We wandered through stalls of fresh produce and handmade crafts, the air thick with the scent of lavender and baked bread. She moved with an ease that made my chest ache, stopping to chat with vendors, her laughter bright and unguarded. I trailed behind, carrying a basket of her purchases, feeling like I was living in a dream I didn't deserve. "You're quiet again," she said as we sat on a bench, sharing a warm pretzel. "What's going on in that head of yours?" I tore off a piece of dough, avoiding her eyes. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted. "I don't know how to be us without hurting Riley." Her smile faded, and she set the pretzel down. "I know," she said softly. "I've been asking myself the same thing. But Ellie, I don't regret it. Do you?" I looked at her, her face open and vulnerable, and my heart twisted. "No," I whispered. "But I'm scared." She reached for my hand, her thumb tracing circles on my palm. "Me too. But we'll figure it out. Together." That night, back at the house, Riley came home in a mood, slamming her bag on the counter. "Work was a disaster," she groaned, collapsing onto the couch. "Ellie, you staying for dinner?" I glanced at Lillian, who was chopping vegetables in the kitchen, her movements steady, but her eyes flicking to mine. "Sure," I said, my voice tight. Dinner was tense, or maybe it just felt that way to me. Riley rambled about her boss, oblivious to the undercurrent between her mother and me. Lillian was quieter than usual, her smiles careful, and I wondered if she felt the same guilt I did. After dinner, Riley suggested a movie, but I excused myself, claiming a headache. I needed space, air, anything to clear my head. I stepped onto the back patio, the night cool and quiet, and stared at the stars, trying to make sense of my feelings. Lillian found me there, her footsteps soft on the deck. "You okay?" she asked, sitting beside me. I shook my head. "I feel like I'm betraying her. Like I'm stealing something that doesn't belong to me." She was silent for a moment, then said, "You're not stealing anything, Ellie. You're living. And so am I." I turned to her, my eyes stinging. But what if she finds out? What if she hates me? Lillian's face softened, and she pulled me into a hug, her arms warm and steady. "She might be hurt," she said. "But she loves you. And she loves me. We'll find a way." I wanted to believe her, but the fear lingered. We sat there, her arms around me, until Riley's voice called from inside, breaking the spell. "Mom? Ellie? You guys out there?" Lillian pulled back, her hand lingering on mine. "We'll talk later," she whispered, and I nodded, my heart heavy but full. The next day, Riley invited me to a gallery opening downtown, a rare chance to see her in her element. Lillian came too, and watching them together, Riley's energy, Lillian's quiet pride, made my chest ache. They were family, and I was the outsider, no matter how much I loved them both. At the gallery, surrounded by abstract paintings and pretentious chatter, I felt Lillian's eyes on me. She was across the room, talking to an artist, but her gaze found mine, steady and warm. I smiled, and she smiled back, and for a moment, the world felt right. But then Riley grabbed my arm, pulling me toward a painting. "Ellie, look at this one. Isn't it wild?" I nodded, my mind elsewhere, and that's when I saw it, a flicker of suspicion in Riley's eyes. "You've been weird lately," she said, her voice low. "Everything okay?" My stomach dropped. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Just tired." She studied me, then nodded, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. As we left the gallery, Lillian's hand brushed mine, and I pulled away, the guilt too heavy to bear. I was falling for her, but at what cost? The tension with Riley grew, a subtle shift I couldn't ignore. She didn't ask questions, not outright, but her glances lingered, her silences heavier. I started spending less time at the house, claiming work or errands, but the truth was I couldn't face her without feeling like a liar. Lillian noticed. One evening, she texted me, "Meet me at the park. 7 p.m. We need to talk." I arrived at the park as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the grass. Lillian was waiting on a bench, her coat pulled tight against the autumn chill. She looked tired, her usual confidence tempered by something softer, more vulnerable. "Ellie," she said as I sat beside her, "you're pulling away. What's going on?" I stared at my hands, my throat tight. "I can't keep doing this," I said. "It's tearing me apart. Riley's my best friend, and I'm lying to her every day." Lillian nodded, her eyes steady. "I know. I feel it too. But running from us won't make it go away." I looked at her, my heart aching. "What are we supposed to do? Tell her? Break her heart?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "I don't know. But I know I can't pretend I don't feel this. I've spent too long pretending." Her words hit hard, and I realized how much she'd given up to be here, to be honest with herself. I reached for her hand, squeezing it. "I don't want to pretend either," I said. "But I don't know how to do this without losing her." We sat in silence, the park emptying as the sky darkened. Finally, she said, "We'll tell her. Together. When the time's right." The idea terrified me, but it also felt like a lifeline. "Okay," I whispered. "Together." The next week was a blur of normalcy and dread. I went through the motions, coffee with Riley, dinners at the house, stolen moments with Lillian when Riley wasn't looking. But the secret was suffocating, and I knew it couldn't last. One night, after Riley went to bed, Lillian and I sat in the living room, a single lamp casting shadows on the walls. She poured us wine, her movement slow, deliberate. "We need to set a date," she said. "To tell her." I nodded, my stomach churning. "When?" "Soon," she said. "Before it eats us alive." We settled on the following weekend, when Riley would be home for a full day. The plan was simple: sit her down, be honest, and hope she'd understand. But as the days passed, my fear grew. What if she didn't? What if she cut me out of her life? The night before we planned to tell her, I couldn't sleep. I wandered to the kitchen for water and found Riley there, staring at her phone. She looked up, her eyes sharp. "Ellie, we need to talk." My heart stopped. "About what?" She set her phone down, her expression unreadable. "You and Mom. Something's going on, isn't it?" I froze, my mind racing for an excuse, but nothing came. "Riley, Don't lie to me," she said, her voice low but firm. "I've seen the way you look at each other. I'm not stupid." Tears stung my eyes. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't mean for this to happen." She stared at me, her face a mix of hurt and anger. "She's my mom, Ellie. How could you?" Before I could respond, Lillian appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Riley," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. "Let's talk about this. All of us." Riley's eyes flicked between us, and for a moment I thought she'd bolt. But she nodded, her jaw tight, and sat at the table. Lillian sat beside me, her hand brushing mine under the table, a silent anchor. "I love her," Lillian said, her voice clear. "And I think she loves me. We didn't plan this, but it's real." Riley's face crumpled, and she looked away, tears in her eyes. "You're my mom," she said. "And you're my best friend. How am I supposed to deal with this?" I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice breaking. "I love you, Riley. I never wanted to hurt you." She stood, shaking her head. "I need time," she said, and walked out, leaving Lillian and me in silence. The weight of her words crushed me, but Lillian's hand found mine, steady and warm. "She'll come around," she said, but her voice trembled. "She has to." The next few days were agony. Riley didn't answer my texts, didn't come to the house, didn't look me in the eye when we passed at a mutual friend's party. I felt like I'd lost her, and the guilt was a physical ache, a knot in my chest that wouldn't loosen. Lillian tried to stay strong, but I could see the strain in her eyes, the way her smiles didn't reach them. We spent evenings together, talking, holding each other, but the absence of Riley hung over us like a storm cloud. "She needs time," Lillian kept saying, but I wasn't sure I believed her. One afternoon, I went to Riley's apartment, determined to fix things. She opened the door, her face guarded, and let me in without a word. Her place was a mess, takeout containers on the counter, clothes strewn across the couch, and it hit me how much this had hurt her. "Riley," I started, my voice shaky, "I'm so sorry. I never meant to betray you." She crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. "You didn't just betray me, Ellie. You changed everything. She's my mom. How am I supposed to look at her the same way?" Tears stung my eyes. "I know. I hate myself for it. But I love her, Riley. I didn't choose this, it just happened." She laughed, a bitter sound. "Love. You're 22. What do you know about love?" Her words cut deep, but I didn't back down. "I know it's real," I said. "And I know I'd do anything to keep you in my life. You're my best friend." She looked away, her jaw tight. "I don't know if I can do this," she said. "I need space, Ellie. From both of you." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak, and left. The drive back to Lillian's was a blur, tears streaming down my face. When I got there, Lillian was in the kitchen, her eyes red. "She called me," she said. "She's angry, but she's talking. That's something." I fell into her arms, sobbing. "What if we lose her?" "We won't," she said, her voice fierce. "She's hurting, but she loves us. We'll wait." The waiting was torture, but Lillian was my anchor. We spent quiet nights together, cooking, watching old movies, finding comfort in the small moments. She told me stories of her marriage, how she'd buried her attraction to women for years, how meeting me had woken something in her she thought was gone. "You make me feel alive," she said one night, her head on my shoulder. I didn't think I'd get that again. I kissed her, soft and slow, and for a moment, the world was just us. But Riley's absence was always there, a shadow we couldn't escape. A week later, Riley texted me, "Meet me at the coffee shop." Noon. My heart raced as I walked into the cafe, spotting her at a corner table. She looked tired but calmer, her hands wrapped around a mug. "I've been thinking," she said as I sat down. "I'm still mad, but I don't want to lose you. Or Mom." Relief flooded me, but I stayed quiet, letting her speak. "It's weird," she said. "And it's going to take time. But I want to try to understand. For both of you." I reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. "Thank you," I whispered. "I'll do whatever it takes." She nodded, her eyes soft. "Just don't hurt her, okay? She's been through enough." I promised, my heart full, and when I got back to Lillian's, I told her everything. We cried, laughed, held each other, the weight of the past weeks lifting just a little. But as we sat on the couch, her hand in mine, I knew it wasn't over. Riley was trying, but trust was fragile, and we'd have to earn it. For the first time, though, I felt hope, real, fragile hope, that we could find a way forward. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, things shifted. Riley started coming to the house again, her visits tentative at first, her smiles cautious. We didn't talk about Lillian and me directly, but she asked questions, small ones, like how we spent our days, what we cooked for dinner. It was her way of rebuilding, and I clung to it like a lifeline. Lillian and I found a rhythm, too. We were careful around Riley, keeping our touches subtle, our affection quiet, but in private, we were fire and light. She taught me to garden, her hands guiding mine in the soil, and I taught her to love the cheesy rom-coms I'd grown up on. Every moment with her felt like a gift, a second chance at something I hadn't known I needed. One evening, Riley invited us to a small dinner at her apartment. It was the first time we'd all be together, deliberately, since the truth came out. I was nervous, my hands sweaty as we walked up to her door, Lillian's presence beside me both grounding and terrifying. Riley greeted us with a hug, her smile genuine, but still tinged with something I couldn't name. The apartment was warm, smelling of roasted vegetables and fresh bread. We sat around her small table, the conversation light at first, work, movies, the weather. But as the night wore on, Riley set her fork down, her eyes on us. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice steady. "This is still weird for me. But I see how happy you make each other. And I don't want to stand in the way of that." Lillian reached for her hand, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said. "I know this hasn't been easy." Riley nodded, looking at me. "You're still my best friend, Ellie. That hasn't changed. But I need you to be honest with me. Always." "I will," I promised, my voice thick. "I love you, Riley." She smiled, a real smile this time, and the knot in my chest loosened. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. After dinner, we walked back to Lillian's house, the night crisp and clear. She took my hand, her fingers warm against mine, and we stopped under a streetlight, the world quiet around us. "I love you," she said, her eyes bright. "And I'm not afraid anymore." I kissed her right there in the open, my heart full. "I love you, too," I said, and for the first time, I believed we could make this work. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be questions, judgments, moments of doubt. But as we stood there, the stars above us and Riley's blessing in our hearts, I knew we'd face it together. Love wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and that was enough.